by the Inin. Okay, we started the Inin. It's like a panim, we're holding very like this. We have Shefa, we have a Shefa, as the Nekuda is, it brings the Mashal Gashmi, when they get to the Mayim, that in order for the Mayim to reach from one place to the next, so it has to a little bit water, push it to a little bit of the substance of the water, changes its place. Originally it was in point number 1, and it goes to travels, and it changes its place, and it goes to point number 2. Al-Derech they say in Ruchnis, Shefa means that a certain muhus, a muhus dvarma, a chilik muhusi of the Keach Ruchni, travels. In a Ruchnis, in Inyan, it has to go through a process to relate himself and to change and to be suited to the Makam HaMakabel. So you have the Mashal, he brings the Mashal Seichel, the Mashal Ashpa of Rav Talmud. So the Rav has one type of Me'ech. So he understands the Svara. The way he understands the Svara, the way it's in the Rav's Me'ech, cannot be understood by the Talmud. The Talmud is a different Me'ech. A Me'ech which is lower, the Mashal, it's lower than this Me'ech Rav. In order for the Talmud to understand the Inyan, the Rav has to take this Svara and to lower it down and to explain it in a way that suits the Me'ech Talmud. So now, two things. So first of all, what is the Talmud understanding? The Talmud understanding a little bit of the Seichel Rav. Means the Rav, through a whole Aved of Ashpa, is mitzamtzim his Seichel in a way that it should be masim to the Talmud. So now, there is the Seichel Rav the way it is, Sholei B'tzimtzum, the way it's mere in his Mayach, and there is the Svara the way it was mitzamtzim to be L'Ferech HaTalmud. So on one hand, this Svara is a Mohuz Dvarma. It's a percentage, let's say. It's a certain percent of the Mayach of the Seichel Rav. You can't say that the Talmud understands exactly the way the Rav understands it, because the Rav had to be mitzamtzim. The same Me'ech Rav is a different Me'ech. Me'ech Talmud is a different Me'ech. But le'idach, so the Talmud only gets a limited version, let's say, this part of the Rav. But on one hand, this limited version is a chelik mehusi of the Rav. Le'idach, it's only a chelik, I mean, it's only a part. It's only the way it's betzimtzum, not the way it is betzim. And in order for this inyan to be mitzamtzum, it's not going to happen by itself. In order for the Seichel Rav Melchatchila was an Eidleif, let's say. The Talmud can't grasp the Inyan the way it's an Eidleif. So someone had to be made the Inyan that it should be now in a form that the Me'ech HaTalmud is able to understand it. So the Rav has to go through Tir, the whole Arichas that he's Meirich to be Mevar. Now, what is he really going to get there? Here says, Inyan Erish is Zeraka Ar Levat, Leim Hosa Davar Klal. Means what's being extended of the Makir? What's being given over to the Mekabel? Nothing. Ar Levat. Nothing from the substance of the Makir. Not from the hus of the makar. We see that he brings al derech mashal erev v'ziv hashemesh. So when you get basi ben a gashmiz the mashal, the shemesh is nimtza b'shamayim, and it's the shemesh is mispashet. When the shemesh is when there's zrichas hashemesh, there's light that extends all over the world. The light that we have, is it a part of the substance of the sun? So that we see there's no substance in the light that we have. There's no mahus to it. V'haraya, one of the degwais means when you get if you have a davar shalar is that even after the mashpia leaves. The Talmud, it's not like after the Rav is misalik a seichel. Let's say the Rav forgets the seichel, doesn't make a difference. The Talmud, the svara which is in the Talmud's me'ach is going to be, it's going to escape. No one's going to say that. The svara sarah, the Talmud, what he understood now was not totally in the seichel Rav. Once the Rav gave over to the Talmud his svara, so now the Talmud possesses the svara. It means a part of the substance exists under the Talmud, so it stands independently. It's famous the Seichel Rav doesn't have to be connected to a marker in order for him, because that's a mahus for itself. There is the Talmud, once the Rav is mashpiyat advar Seichel. So the Talmud now has a substance of this Seichel Rav. Now the Rav could go where he has a substance which stands independently. When we get light, is there any substance that we get? Is the air of any substance within itself? It has any mahus within itself? Or it's only an emanation of something else? So it's hard about it's only a reflection of something. There's no mahus to the air. By Mayim, you don't say that the Mayim that came here is a reflection of that water. It's not a reflection of that water. It's an entity for itself. Lechatchila was nichlal in the Makir. This Mayim that we got to that area, Lechatchila was nichlal in the puddle that was here. But now that it left, now it's a little bit of that substance extended itself, and now it's here. So it's not an emanation of something else. It's not a reflection of something. It's an entity for itself. Eir HaShemesh isn't an entity for itself. For sure not. He says, there's nothing from the Mohus HaShemesh which is mispashet. The Mohus HaShemesh stays where it is. So what do we have? Yeah, we're able to see. The Shemesh is meir, there's light all over. Is this light have any substance? The answer is no. There's no substance at all. You can't preserve the light, you can't do anything. It means it's hard about, there's no Mohus. So we'll see later what the Havana is. So that's the first thing. So what's the hechrich? And saying the Cheshma Dvarim, he brings it out in the Maimer. What's the hechrich that there has to be a tzimtzum, there has to be a tirda in order to mashpia dashba? If the Rav is giving over from himself, if there's something changing, there's a certain seichel Rav. As far as Rav is now entering a new place, so someone has to change it. As far as Rav Kameshum Sadatzma is going to stay the way it is. The seichel, the way it is in the Me'ach Rav, is going to stay in the element the way it's in the Me'ach Rav. In order for the seichel to be masim to the Talmud, it has to be changed. Here, the shemesh doesn't have to be Torah because the shemesh itself is not being nishpat to the Makabel. The shemesh never comes to the form of a Makabel. You say that there is the light the way it is by the sun, and there is the light the way we experience light. Shalei ba'erach. The same way you have the Rav and the Talmud. You have the seichel the way, the svara the way it is by the Rav, the svara the way it is by the Talmud. The Talmud's me'ach is a different me'ach, than the Rav. So there's somebody get to shemesh. You have so there has to be a tzimtzum. The Rav has to, you say. Durcharbeit in the Indian to process it, that should be in a way that's masim to the Me'ach HaTalmud. See the same thing when you get to Shemesh. You have the light the way it is in the sun. The light the way it is in the sun, we don't experience the light the way it's in the Makir. Any time there's a Makir, and then there's the Indian the way it's realized in the Makir, we never experience the Indian the way it is in the Makir. The Makir is the potential for the Indian. It's the Indian the way it's in a potential state. It's not a certain. See, even you take in Pashter in Yona, not Shemesh is in Atzem, but I'm saying even the Pashtas. Someone has a Keach HaSeichel. You have a Keach HaSeichel, and then you're utilizing your Seichel L'Poil. The using it at L'Poil is always going to be more mitzumtzum than the Keach. The Keach has a potential. The Keach, you use the Keach for this sugya, for that sugya, for any type of sugya. The Agbala of what type of sugya you don't have in the Keach HaSeichel. But when you're actually understanding a specific svara, when you're using out the Keach L'Poil, when it's being realized L'Poil, it has to have a certain sort of which svara are you understanding. So the kayach is always the mucker of the Indian. See, the resource, not the Indian the way it's realized in a certain pratis the kapula. So the Pashas, even if you don't understand that the shemesh, the behiros, the way it is by the shemesh, is in a whole different eifin than the behiros, the light, the way we see it. Not the Pashas, the shemesh is one type of light, the way it is a davar behiri. We're not experiencing the light the way it is by the mucker. We're experiencing the light the way we experience light. So the chor has to go through a tzimtzum. In order for the light to relate to the makabel, it has to be mishtanim. So Avdem Zakta, the Etzem HaShemesh never doesn't lower itself down. Etzem HaShemesh is never mispashet b'chal to the makabel. What's mispashet is all about. So there's no. So on one hand, there's no substance in what's emanating from the sun, because what's its substance? It's the Shemesh's reflection. There's no other mitzias, there's no other mohus outside of the Makar HaShemesh. What's extended to the makabel is all about. That's mitzad echad. It says ime yes. Sharei meina etzem, the etzem HaShemesh behira memela eru meir. Come ke ime ben etzem klal. What's he saying here? That's on one hand. On one hand, the eir is arba bavad. L'idach, this ha'ara is meina etzem, which you don't have there by the Rav. This is the two differences. When you get to the marshal by Shefa, what's being extended to the makabel is a mohus davar. The makabel is getting a substance, a davar mohusi from the keach harav, from the market. A little bit of the market is being extended to the makabel. By Shemesh, you say, is only what's being nimshach, what's being extended from the makar is a arab bavad, not a mohus. But then you get to the Rav Talmud, the Talmud gets a chelik mohus of the me'ach harav. But is the mohus that the Talmud's getting, is that a reflection of the me'ach harav? Does the Talmud, is the svar the way the Talmud understands it, does that reflect the way the Rav understands it? You don't say that the seichel Talmud is me'ein seichel Rav. It's not a reflection of that. It's not a izgalus of that. It's the fakir. The Rav is mitzamtzim seichel. That should be masim to the Talmud. This little that the Talmud gets is an entity for itself. It's not reflecting something else. Mashiach, when you get to Eira Shemesh, on one hand you say the Eira Shemesh is Arab Avad. Le'idach, therefore it's Er Me'ina Etzim. It's Me'ina Etzim. Because it's not that the Shemesh is what it is, and the Shemesh stays in its mohus, and that's Mispasha, that's Meir. That's Nirgash. That emanates. You understand what I'm saying? You say, you take the simple example, just to bring out this point, you take the example of someone standing in front of a mirror. So on one hand, the image is not a chilik mohus of the person is being mispasha to the image. You stay exactly where you are. Le'idach, what's the image that's on the mirror? It's the person's reflection. If it's the person's reflection, so it looks exactly like him. It's not going to be something else. But the Seichel HaTalmud is not a reflection of the Svara the way the Rav understands it. It's not a reflection of that. It's not an emanation of that. It's an aspect of that. An aspect of the makir was evolved into davar which is masim to the makabel. So what was evolved, since what was evolved was an aspect of the makar, so since the makar evolved now into a tzir that's masked into the Talmud, so it stands for itself. It doesn't reflect something else. The makar didn't evolve. The makar stayed where it is. But the makar is a zamis which is mispashit. The etzem is something which it has a certain takeif that when you have such a etzem, it emanates. It's mispashit. It reflects. So it's its reflection. It's mispashit. So what's being mispashit? Kameshu be'etzem. That's what's mispashit. It's not a limited version. The way it is, the inyan, the way the makar's mahos is not limited to stay only in its own entity, and no one else. It's not going to be. It's not going to emanate. It's not going to be mispashit mahos, because it's such a davar because it has such a takeif. The mele it's mispashit. It doesn't contain the makar doesn't contain its energy within itself. The mele it reflects, but the makar never extended itself to relate to the makar makabel. So the makar is higher than the makabel. You see, you use the makar is higher than the makabel. The shemesh never relates to light the way we experience it. The shemesh doesn't relate to it. If it doesn't relate to the makabel, so how do we feel it? Because the shemesh is something which doesn't stay its energy doesn't stay limited within itself. So it emanates, and it's mispashit. But what's mispashit? The etzem kameshu is mispashit. So since the etzem hashemesh is behirus, so that behirus itself is mispashit, is felt. So it's mein amar. It's the mar being meir. It's the mar shining. It's not something else. You understand? The Hachodesh is the mar shining. On one hand, we're going to say Gilui, the makar is much higher than Gilui. Gilui is the way in his experience. It's much lower. The makar is much higher than that. But here the consist, since the makar is not limited to a specific form, so when you have this entity, it's b'meila mispashet also. So in other words, it doesn't have to lower itself down to be in the mode of Gilui in order to be mispashet. It doesn't have to relate to the tzir of ispashtus in order to be mispashet. Because if it would have to relate to the tzir of ispashtus in order to be mispashet, that would mean that would be that like ashpa, that the etzem kameshu was higher than the ashpa, higher than the Gilui. What comes in the Gilui? The part of the makar which relates to Gilui. Then it wouldn't be Ermein Amar. Then the Gilui would be a separate entity. It's a part or an aspect of the etzem which relates to the tzir of Gilui. Here the etzem stays kameshu, higher than Gilui. But since this etzem is higher than Gilui, but it's not mukbal, this etzem. So b'meila it's also meir, it's also mispashit, it's also felt. So it's felt and it's meir, even though it's not, doesn't limit itself, it doesn't come into the form of his galus. Versteht the minion? That's Ermein Amar.
So does mean einem and etzem klal?
If you from the Gilui has no mahus for itself. Is the Gilui a mahus? Is there an entity of Gilui as a separate entity? But the Seichel Hatam. The Seichel Hatam is a separate entity. You have the Svara the way the Rav understands it, and now an aspect of that Svara evolved now into a new form, a Svara of the Talmud. So you have now the Svara Talmud is not dependent on the Svara Sarab. It's not its emanation. It's not its reflection. It's a separate entity. Mashegam by Shemesh, the sun, the makar never extends itself to that an aspect of the makar should now be in a form of lighting a world. It never relates to lighting a world. There's only one light, the light that's in the sun. So I say, if there's only one light that's not, how do we feel it? That light is not limited to be only within itself. I mean, it's meir. So what you're getting is a result. It's not a mahus for itself. The mahus is the etzem. But this etzem, since it's not limited to stay dafk in a form of etzem, the meir it's also mispashit. So what's the mispashit? This entity is being mispashit. So the Gilui has no mahus. It's the etzem being mispashit. It's the etzem being meir. So last time, if you look at it, if you look at it from the point of view of the etzem, we would see that the truth is there is no metzias of Gilui. From the point of view of the etzem, it's all the etzem is blik vos, so it's also mispashit. We look at it. If you look at the Gilui as a separate entity, we say this entity has no substance. See, if you look at someone's going to look at a mirror, not going to know there's a person. The teva is that a person is a zamisar zach, means across a mirror. Let's say he reflects. But let's say someone's not going to know the person; he's just going to see an image. You say that image has no substance there. There's nothing there. The truth is, what is it? It's that it's a person's reflection, something else. So you say it as an entity for itself. There's no mahos. What's the mahos? It's the shemesh, and the shemesh is nirgash. It's a different meaning. In other words, we have to understand this Indian that there's a musig that the etzem, the reason why it's misgala, the fact that it's able to reveal itself, is not because it relates to the misgeres of Gilui. Usually, when you get to Rav Talmud, the fact that the Rav is able to come to the Makam Talmud is because he's able to relate. He's able to be mitzamtzim himself and relate to the Makam Makabel. You see, the etzem is higher than Gilui. He's also begili. How is he begili? Because he relates to the musig of gili. He's mitzamtzim himself to the musig of gili. Here we're saying not like that. Even if he's not mitzamtzim himself to the realm of gili, still, since the etzem is not limited to be in a specific form, so without being mitzamtzim himself, the etzem kameshu is also begili. It's begili because it's not limited to be dafka in the form of etzem. Not that it has to relate. The inyan melchatchila is not limited. You understand the inyan? That's the Nakuda. That's not Nabisal B'Herren, okay. That's the Mashem, so he said like this. And that's Mashem Shpehira, Meleiru Meir, Mikomkim, I mentioned the Dugma last time with Shimshon HaGibber. I don't know if that's been mentioned again, but the Svara Sichlos is a good mashal. It's Chveisha Basa Besser mashal. The mashal of Shimshon HaGibber, the mashal of the Klal, the Sibba coming before Mesubif. Anyways, but these are the Mishalim that... we should mention maybe again the mashal of Shimshon HaGibber, or it's maybe we'll mention it. This is my mashal, but I don't know if it's true or not. But it brings out the point a little bit. But the ma'aseh like this: that regular gevura that we have is a certain. Say a person has a certain amount of energy. So you say in order to push a table, you need, let's say, a certain amount of energy. To push something bigger, you need more kayach. Some people only have enough kayach to push a table. Some people have kayach to push more. But the nekudas hadvarim is when we have kayach, it's a certain mitzias. It's a certain quality that we contain. We have the ability to move something. It's a certain mitzias. You could have more of it. You could have less of it. So you could have more kayach. You could have less kayach. To push a table, you use less kayach. To do something bigger, you use more kayach. As a gatus. And b'meile, you say when a person pushes a table, let's say, if he's gonna, so you could count how much energy was used, how much kayach was in slavish in pushing the table. Certain, and you say how much is it? Did he use all his kayach? No, he has more kayach, but he used a certain amount. Yeah, a person has that. He's able to carry something if it's 1,000 pounds. He picked up something that's 500 pounds. He didn't have to use all his kayach, but a little bit he did use. So if you see him picking up something 500 pounds, you saw a little bit of his kayach, not everything, but a little bit was invested in this pool. So Shimshon HaGibber, by him, he had a different type of gvura. He had a getach gvura. Means, what do you say getach gvura? He wasn't limited in the musig of gvura. He didn't have a certain amount of power. He didn't have any agbolis when it came to the musig of gvura. He wasn't mugbal legabi gvura. So it's not a certain amount. A certain amount can never become bligvul. Bligvul means that you have an Indian without agbolis. Not you have a lot of the Indian. A lot is gvul. Much more is gvul. Bligvul means you have the Indian without agbolis. It's not a mitzias. It's not a mitzias of a certain amount of gvura. It's another certain Indian. A different type of kayach altogether. So if someone has the Indian of gvura without limits, are you able to have a little bit of that? Could you take a little bit of something that has no agbolis? If you have a quantity of something, you can have a little bit of that quantity. It's not an abyssal. But if you have something that has a certain mohos without agbolis, you have gvura without agbolis, could you have a little bit of that mohos? A little bit of that mohos will be bligvul. It's not shy to have a little bit. You have a little bit of something which is unlimited. You can have a little bit of it. If it's a little bit of this mohos has no agbolis. A little of this mohos is no gvul. So you say, if Shimshon HaGibber could say, I want to use a little bit of my kayach gvura to push a table. There's no little bit. It's not nimdad in a metzius of kamas. He has the idin of gvura on agbolis. There's no limit, a little bit of it. So one edge you're going to say, so was he able to push a table? Why? He didn't have enough. He couldn't have. Let's say to push a table, you have to have a certain amount of energy. I don't know what's the lashon in Sfasa Medina Viflas Gate, but let's say you need I don't know what the words people use, but you need to have a certain amount of kayach. How do you? Is it the absavart of them? How much? How much power is needed to push a table? Let's say you need to have a certain. How do you call it? You need a certain amount of power. There's a name, a word for this.
Horsepower.
I don't know. See words there or not.
Joules.
What's joules? That's like kayach. Good. So you need to have a certain amount of kayach to push a table. You say Shimshon Agibur didn't have that kayach. He didn't have the amount of kayach to push a table because he wasn't able to divide his kayach because he had gevura with arak balas. He didn't have a little bit at the nishgat. So he wouldn't be able to push a table. A table is not bli gvul. A table you need to have a certain amount, but he didn't have it. So when do you need to have a certain amount? If you have regular kayach, a metzias of kayach, so you have to have enough kayach to push the table. But if you have gevura on agbalis, so then mechal masayim on it. If you have no agbalis, avada you could push a table. When do you need to have enough? When do you have to have a power that suits this pool? If you're limited. So if you're limited, or you have too much, or you have too little, or it has to suit. If you're limited, so you're only able to push this if your kayach relates to this. But if you don't have enough power to do this, maybe or because it's too much, or because too little, but if you have the muhusah gvura with arak balas, if you have this most arak balas, so then you're gonna be able to push it, not because you have enough kayach to push it. If you're not mugbal, so maybe you can push it also. You can do anything. So even without relating to this pula contains, say, this amount of energy. He doesn't have to have a kayach that relates. He doesn't have to have a kayach that mitztayer in hazazas shulchan, a kayach which is this and this big. The kayach, the way it is, blig vol, could do anything. If it's not mugbal, so if it's not mugbal, it could do anything. Avada could push a small table also. So with how much energy is he going? With which kayach is he going to use to push a table? He's going to use a little bit of his kayach. There's no such thing. He's using his whole kayach. So and how is he using this own kayach? Is the kayach mitzamtzim? It was saying if someone's going to see him pushing this table, say if someone sees a regular person pushing a table, you're going to say, I see a little bit of his energy. I see a little bit. I see a percentage of it. He has much more. I see a couple of joules, whatever it's called. Epis I see of his energy. Epis I see of his kayach. Let's say he has 60 degree kayach, let's say, or 100 degree. I see a couple of degrees. I see when he pushes the table. Shimshon Agibur, he didn't have 100 degrees. He had, without the musik of degrees, gvura with arak balas. So when someone sees him pushing a table, is he going to say, I see a little bit of his kayach? Did he see a little bit of it? He saw a table being pushed by Shimshon. He said, I saw a little bit of Shimshon Agibur's gvura. He didn't see he didn't see any of the gvura. Because what you saw is a pool of pratis. And his kayach is not a davar prati. His kayach is a mahus without a tzir prati. So if, in order for him to push the table, he has to be mitztayer and a tzir prati, so you say, I saw his kayach to be mitztayer and a tzir prati. But if the reason why he pushes, he's able to affect this pool of pratis, it's not because he's mitztayer and that tzir pratis. It's because he's not mugbal. So then, when you see the pool of pratis, it's b'chal not what the Indian is. But from Shimshon's, so you say, it's a arab vad. The pu'ula doesn't express the kayach at all. Le'idach, if the pu'ula doesn't express it, pushing a table doesn't express the kayach, so how did he do it? He's not limited, it's a different story. He's not limited, he's there too. Even though he doesn't relate to that tzir. Versteh the meaning?
So this big will never be expressed.
No. In Gili, you'll never see it.
So it won't be ever expressed.
But no, I'm just saying the dogma for this point. That when you say when you get to Eira Shemesh, we're saying the etzem. The reason why the etzem is begilui is not because there's an aspect in the etzem that relates to gilui. Since the etzem is not mugbal, in this nekuda, the etzem is not limited to contain its energy within itself, so automatically it sprouts. It shines. So why does it shine? Because it lowers itself down to the relative shining. Because it's so powerful, so b'meila it extends itself. B'meila it reflects. It emanates. So the emanation is it's the it which is being emanated. The makar, which is not an etzir of gilui, since it's higher than gilui, it's etzem, but it's an etzem which is not mukbal to be dafke in the tzir of etzem, to be dafke in the hagbala of only being higher than expression. He b'meila is expressed. So the expression itself doesn't express what it is, because expression is never mukbal. See, we're experiencing the sun. We could define what we have from light. When it's light, before it's light, I can't see darkness. It's dark. Now that there's light, I'm able to see what's going on. Does that express what light really is in Mohos? That doesn't express what light really is in Mohos. Not even 1% of what light really is. So how? But what I'm seeing, that's the Shemesh's reflection. Since the Shemesh has air, even that it's an etzem behiri. So b'meila it emanates. B'meila it's going to be seen. It's going to be experienced. Even though with experience you cannot express the etzem. The etzem is not expressed. The energy of the etzem is far beyond experiencing light. So if you say it's far beyond experiencing light, how do I experience it? Because it's not limited to be dafka in a form of higher than experience. So it's also seen. It's also experienced. But there is no mohos of light which is masim to gilui. So move on other sinish as a.
So the Lulu Gilui, but not because that's what it is.
Not because the mohos has been stayed in the tzir of gilui. Because the mohos is not mugbal. This etzem, see, if it's etzem, so it's higher than gilui. It's not mugbal. This mohos is not mugbal. Doesn't have the boundaries between etzem and gilui. So mele is also mizgala. So if you look, it's not also gilui and also etzem. It doesn't have the boundaries of etzem and gilui. But mele is also be gilui. Not because it also has the property of gilui. That would be shefa. This aspect, this mohos, also has that. Also could relate to that. That's tzimtzum. Here, it doesn't relate also to that. It's not. It doesn't have the agbolis of to be dafka in a tzir of etzem. So the way it is be'etzem, it's also mispashal. So from the point of view of etzem, there's only one akudah. We're looking at it. We see an expression, and we see the etzem. So you say that what you're seeing is Arab Avad. What's the truth? The etzem doesn't have the boundaries of gilui to and which is differentiating etzem and gilui. For me, it's also be gilui. I don't know. I'm trying to. Let's see what he says here in the Maimir. Maybe it's a bit very unclear. But Hemshech Hazman. Okay, right away he starts speaking when they get to the Tetzah. That since it's Arab Vat, if it was like the Moshel of Shefa or the Seichel Arab, an aspect of the Seichel Arab, is in order for the Seichel Arab to be mispashed in the Makam Atam. It's not the Rechemel. It's not that when the Rav has a svara, b'meila people around them start understanding. Where the svara exists, that's where it's understood. Where the svara is not understood, it doesn't exist. It means the svara is a certain mitzias. It exists where the svara is. Outside of the svara, it doesn't exist. The shemesh is a etzem. It's not a certain form of light. So it says, remember it says this, that like you have, I was saying to get the Shimshon Agir, they say, why do you have this musik of gilui in the Indian of behirus, in light? Because really, the fact that era shemesh, how does it work, be'etzem, that it becomes light, mitamol, takes away darkness. So Chassidus says there's a certain a marshal for pshitis. The fact that we're able to see this kayach that makes us the ability to see is a mushal of pshitas, of heder atzir. Because it's not the pshat that there's you see, when it's dark, the pshat when it's dark, you're not able to see things. It's not that there's no, that the nature of dvarim is my eyes are in one place, the object is somewhere else, so I'm not able to see it. It's there's a havdalah. The thing is there and I'm here, so I can't see what's. Saying air is the way air works is not that there's a certain entity of light that comes here and it sheds a certain brightness and therefore I'm able to see. Light it's a certain kayach which is mevatel, that there's take away gdarim, take away agbalas. Cancels the vision, or it cancels this agbala that something is here and it can't reach my eyes. It's not that light brings the thing to my eyes. Light is a kayach which is mevatel agbalas. Certain nekuda pshitas. It's a metzias is, you say everything metzias has its form. This is red, white, tzechveis, seichel, midis. This is in was besteht the metzias of air, bittul of gahagbalas, bittul of divisions. So it's in of heder metzias, bittul metzias. So if you have a metzias, you could have more of a metzias and less than metzias. You could have more red or less red, more seichel, less seichel. What if you have a metzias which in Yoni is bittul of agbalas? It's a kayach. Say canceling the divisions. Say a little bit of canceling is no division. It's a mohus of no division, no agbalas. So what's a little bit of that? It's not a davar mischalik. So nekuda pshitas is mischalik. You kind of a little bit of heder mitzias. A little heder mitzias is no mitzias. If you have a mitzias chiyuvis, you can have more of it or less of it. But if in Yoni is no hagbalas, cancellation of agbalas, so what's more or less? So it's not a davar mischalik really, the Indian of behirus. Yeah, I'm just relating it to the marshal of Shimshon Agibra. The gvura is not mischalik. V'meila, so how is, if you have this mohus, the shemesh has this nukudah b'hiras na'atzim is way, but it's not limited to have it only in a certain form. It's also mispashit. But where we see it, okay, this nukudah doesn't bring out so much this doesn't bring out this prat of Arab Bavad. That's a different nukudah. Okay, let me resume shtei though. Since it's Arab Bavad, but it's not that a chelik of the etzem extends itself, and it's mislabish in the tzir of the mekabel. So the ein etzem nitwas mislabish b'zeh. What's pshat ein etzem nitwas mislabish b'zeh? But the seichel that Rav the word is the fact that this Rav is masber his seichel, his svara, in a way that's masim to the Talmud. So now, if the Talmud understands it, it means that the svara of the Rav was mitztayer now in the seichel of Talmud. You see the mashal of the Sikha 7. If the koyach is not if the stone is not flying, it means that a little bit of the koyach was mitztayer in the tzir of heaven flying. If the koyach is mufshis from that tzir, if the koyach never related, if the seichel Rav would stay in the tzir the way the Rav understands it and wouldn't relate to the Me'ech Talmud, so then Talmud wouldn't understand. How does the Talmud understand? Because the seichel Rav is mitztamtzim and mitztayer like the Me'ech Talmud. What does it mean that by Eina Etzem Nitwas Mislabish B'zeh? The Mohus, which is the market of everything, was never mitztayer in the tzir of being Meir Welt. We have a Shemesh which is an Etzem Behiri, and we have the light that we get, which is pushing away darkness, making the world light. The Etzem was never mitztayer. The Mohus of light never came into the tzir of pushing away darkness, or of making the world light. It never related to a world. This Mohus state, the Etzem was never Nitwas Mislabish B'zeh. The Etzem state Kameshu. So if the Etzem state Kameshu, so how do we experience it not the way it is? The Etzem itself is higher than Mitzias. It's higher than Gilui. And the Etzem is never Nitwas and Mislabish in the tzir of Gilui. So if he's not Nitwas and Mislabish in the tzir of Gilui, the Etzem doesn't relate, doesn't come into the form of Gilui. So how is it be Gilui? The answer is, the way it is B'mhusa, it's not limited to be dafka in a way of Etzem. But it's never Nitwas and Mislabish. But the Etzem, the Mohus, is never Nitwas and Mislabish. If the meaning. If the Etzem would be, in order for the Shemesh to bring light to the world, it would have to go through, evolve itself. The Shemesh would have to, an aspect of the Shemesh would have to be involved in a way that suits the tzir of shining a world. Then it would have to be with Derech, it couldn't be with Derech HaMelech. Because the Shemesh Mitzadatzim is a Mahus Bohir, it's the Etzem, the Makir. And in order for him to Balaich Navelt, he would have to come into the tzir of Balaich Navelt. The same with the Seichel Rav has to go through a whole process to relate to the Me'ech Talmud. The Seichel, the way it is by the Rav is Vida Rav status. You have to the Seichel Rav has to go through an involvement. So why doesn't that kind of happen? The Derech HaMelech in this Kamei Shuhum Tzadatzman. But Shemesh is Derech HaMelech. Why? Because the Etzem is takanat nitwas and mislabish. Sharinim shu Derech HaMelech me Shemesh. Vein tzarich shum tirdevis askes ba Shemesh lahoyer meir v'meil. Means the Shemesh is a zach that it's lechatchila. It's a mohos which doesn't only exist in the property of etzem, higher than mitzias. It's not mugbal to be dafka in that seer. So this mohos, it's not mugbal to be dafka in that. So because it's not mugbal, it's sign away of etzem, sign away of gilu. But it's not because it relates to gilu, because it's not mugbal in the seer of etzem. You understand what I'm saying? Mitzad its pshitis is also begili, not because it relates to the tzir of gili. It's a different Indian. That's what Derech HaMelech. So the reason why something is mispashit is because it's not mugbal to be dafka in a tzir of etzem. So it's not mugbal in tzir. B'meil it's also begili. So this brings out the point. If you say it's the reason why something is begili is because it's not mugbal being in a certain tzir. So the Seichel Rav is mugbal that he's only masim that the Me'ech Rav could understand it. Mash'ink in Shemesh, it's not mugbal that it has behirus dafke in such a eifin. So not that it has behirus also in a eifin of gili. It's not mugbal to have behirus in a certain eifin. If it's not mugbal to have behirus in a specific eifin, but mele it's going to have it also in a way of gili because it's not limited to having a specific eifin. But when you look at gili, is that a percentage of the mohos? It's not a percentage at all because the Shemesh has this inyan without agbalis, without tzir. But mele it's also going to be in a tzir of gili. Stay the meaning. So the tzir of gili doesn't express it, because the reason why it's begili is because it has the inyan without that gbalus of etzem and gili. How could you tell? If you're looking from Gilui, so you see which is shaykhs to Gilui. The reason why the etzem is Gilui is because it's not mukbal on the tzir of Gilui. It's not mukbal on the tzir of etzem either. But if you're seeing the tzir of Gilui, it's not even a percentage of the etzem, of the muhus of what the inyan is. And that's why the Gilui can never detach the Gilui because it has no etzem for itself. The Gilui has no etzem. The Gilui is audible that. The muhus is one muhus which is not Gilui and not etzem. The muhus is higher than that. Therefore, it's not limited to be dafka in a way of market. It could be also in a way of Gilui. See, you see, Marshal Shimshon, if someone's going to want to take the kayach that Shimshon Agir to push the table, he's going to want to see someone. Let's say there was ability. I don't know exactly in Chacham Sa'ilam. If someone pushes a table or throws a stone, let's say, so you're able to, I don't know, throwing the stone, but if someone pushing a table, you're able to capture the energy. But Shimshon, you wouldn't be able to capture it. Because it was a kech, it's a gvura with haragbalas. That's why it's able to do anything. So same when you get to the shemesh, the reason why the shemesh is begilui is not because the shemesh has also to begin with light that's also in the mode of gilui. It has light without modes, without forms of light. If you have light without modes, you're going to be in all modes. The shemesh is not blikvol. In this inyan, in order for it to be mizgala, the reason why the is able to be mizgala is because the shemesh has the eichus of not in a limited form. The mele could also be begili. So what's the reason why it's begili is because the mohus hashemesh is not mukbal to the adafke to the tzir of etzem. But when you're experiencing it, you're taking gili as an entity for itself. Gili as an entity for itself in b'ben etzem klal.
I'm just not getting how at the same time we're saying like in the mirror it's him. The
reflection of it. I'm just bringing the mashal of the mirror just to bring out the point that if you're limiting the inyan, so then it's going to be a limited version. But if you're not limiting, it's it emanating. This thing emanates, so it's exactly the way it is. That's the way it's going to emanate. It's going to look the same. What's being mispashet? It's the etzem being mispashet. So it's him amish. But when you're looking at it from the point of view of Gilui in itself, it's audible that. The truth is, it's him himself. It's not two things. It's him himself. That's what we're saying. At the end of the day, we're saying that it's him himself. It's not two things. But if it's him himself, and you're looking, you don't see that. You're looking only at the expression. The expression doesn't express what's going on here at all. Yeah, let me see. It's so yeah. So there's no tirda v'asaskos. In the same way, there's no tzerich. In order for you have the shemesh to begin with, the shemesh is the way it's a etzem adavar bahir, and then not only the shemesh adavar bahir, it's shining, it's meir. So in order for the shemesh for there to be gilui from the etzem, there has to be a tirda. He says there's no tirda. That's number one. Number two, once there's the fact that the world is shining also happens to the derech. He says, not only the from the shemesh is derech, the fact that the shemesh affects the world is derech. You don't say that. You say, but to get a regular ashpa, he said before, it's not enough for the Rav to be mashpia the seichel. He has to relate to the kelim of the Talmud. It's not enough for the seichel Rav to be in a mode of ashpa. It's not going to work. You have a teacher who goes into class, he's also in a mode of ashpa, but if he doesn't relate to the klei makabel, the makabel won't be able to register the Indian. He's married before after about pale. Mashiach, when they get to the shemesh, not only the shemesh, the which comes from the shemesh is shalei beis haskos. Also the bias is affected shalei beis haskos. The house becomes full of light. The nair is he's affecting something. He's trying to relate to the house. Like the Zrikas Evan, the person is investing something in a stone. Say when you get a nair and a bayis, that the nair is mashpia light. They should be able to see what's going on in the house. The nair is in its own element. It's a flame. The flame never is focused on investing light in this house, shedding light in this room. The nair emanates. The teva of a eish is that it emanates. And b'meile wird lichtig. B'meile kann man sagen, was tut sich nicht tun. It's all a titzah of this mohus is mispashet. This mohus is not limited to be dafkin in its own daldams. So without him focusing on the makabel, this mohus to begin with, you say, has an impression around him. Mitzad the take of this mohus. There's different beauty and why he brings all these dogmas. This brings this. You want to say melt or warm up a matris. So there's not, you can't, it's not, you put the matris near the fire, and then they say when you get the secret to Evan, so the Evan you have to focus on the stone. The Evan is not focused on exuding energy. You exude energy, that's not the focus of the regal when he's throwing the stone. He has to focus on that the stone should fly. And he has to invest himself in a stone. See, the fire is not invested that this pot should get hot, this pot should melt. The fire is heat. Whoever's around heat automatically gets affected. It says, "Ramatris mischam memela meish. Gile achem matris der gemela meish." Okay. Kmek ez shmacham samatris der gemela. Masha hanapachim neifchim mapuch shalem beish zorak lekayvus eish la matris. Lahitzi eish mela gile kefshel yechafes khulu. Alchim matris der gemela. It's not like when you get to Zrikas Evan that like a chef, or that in order for the ashpa to reach the makabel, you have to invest it in the makabel. Here, in order for the heat to affect the matches, you don't have to relate the heat to matches. It's not Veda to be mekar of chaim, to make that the heat should relate to this piece of metal. When there's heat, automatically, when whatever's around it is affected. Without a Chimans of the Gemela. I'm not verstehen. Kemeken Hashem Shiur Melas Sabay Shleil Des Hasos. Lechin ein ha'er peil shum shini b'Hashemesh. Yeah. Says Mela. So Mela says it. But again, to Hashpa, he said a couple of pradmen get Hashpa. Since Hashpa by Shefa, the seichel, the way it is by the Rav, is higher than the tfis of the Me'ach Talmud. In order for the Rav, the seichel, in order for the seichel to relate to the Talmud, he has to lower the svara down. It should be masim to the Me'ach Talmud. So these ma'arech before, therefore, we found another thing when you get to Shefa, that if a person is mashpia, it's peil at sefes in the Rav, and if he's not mashpia, it's peil giran in seichel Rav. Explain them why. Because since seichel is a limited thing, it only has what it contains. Seichel doesn't have, it's not blikvol, it's a certain mitzias. So it only contains what's a necessity for the shleimus of Keich HaSeichel. So if the Inyan of Ashpa didn't add anything to Seichel, so the Keich HaSeichel wouldn't contain the Keich HaShpa. See, the fact that you have the ability to relate the Svara to a lower Madrega, where does that ability come from? It's a Keich of Seichel. The Keich of Hashpa comes from a Keich of Seichel. From wann kommt es that Seichel has such a Keich? Because it's neget that the Shleimus of Seichel to have the Keich of Hashpa. So Mele, if you're mashpia, it's peil tesefes, and Mele, if there's no hashpa, it's gela gerayin. Mashiach when you get to the shemesh, the reason why the shemesh is meir is not because the shemesh has a psakayach to relate to makabel. It doesn't have a kayach because the chatchila has the mahus of tarak bolus. So Mele, so it's not that, so it's never an amor of hashpa. So whether the eir is mispashet or not is not a get to the shemesh. The shemesh's mahus is not the reason why it's mashpia is not because it relates to the form of hashpa. Because it doesn't have the akbalis of Gili and Etzem. It has the most of the akbalis. But Mele, it's not shy to say that the beheder ashpa, there be a gerayin in the ashpa, in the mashpia. That's what he says here. In a pil shem shini ba shemesh. Kasher nimshach in mezashem tesis ba shemesh. K'mek mishe person sadlam fnei la shemesh, kasher shema miskasim ba'ovim, in the eseshem gerayin ba shemesh. Shemesh is not being mashpia. It doesn't make any gerayin. It's not less light, or she has more light now contained within herself. The light was never more or less. It was always the same mohus. This mohus is not limited to be in this form. It's never limited. When there's things blocking, so the fact that it's unlimited is being blocked. Fine, but it's not that but it's never relates to the tzir of ashpa. Even though the makabel is not getting anything from this air, the shemesh has no gerayin. So then the next the mashal of Chayes. Ja, die other maskach, ein bisschen vermantert. Ja, Marisha. Okay. Making a bit of Chayes on Nefesh brings two dugmais in Chassidus when you get where you find the derech of Hashpa of one is Shemesh, and one of them is from Chayes. He brings the Chayes Nefesh. K'mei keinu be'er v'Chayes Nefesh v'Chayes Aguf. So, Shurak or Levat. Lay etzem nefesh klal. The etzem nefesh ain't begeder chayis lachis. What does it say here? We have the etzem nefesh which is a mahus of chayis. It says that's one thing. Then we have the guf. The guf mitzad atzma is not a davar chay. Guf is basar vatzamis. Chayis. Chayis is a mahus ruchnis. The guf is basar vatzamis. Shas the nefesh is melubish beguf. The guf is alive. So the guf, there's chayis which is nespashet in the guf. So the way we understand it is the same way you say when you get the regular rashpa. You have the inyan the way it is by the makir. You have the inyan the way it's misgaldet makabel. The makabel is much lower than the makir. So in order for the hashpa to get to the Talmud, there's different samson there. You have to relate the inyan that it should be masim to the me'ach Talmud. Yeah, that's the nekuda of shefa. You have to take the inyan and to be mitzamsim in a way that relates to the me'ach Talmud. So you say that you get the chayis nefesh. The guf is not the chay is the way it is by the nefesh itself, which is a mohus chay. It's an etzem chay. The guf is not a keli, it's such a chayis. The guf is not an etzem chay. The guf is a basar. Basar dam ba'atzam. It's not an etzem chay. So you're going to say, in order for a guf to live, doesn't live the same quality of life the way the etzem lives. The etzem lives, it's a different type of chayis. But even without going into pratim, but the call is saying, the etzem is a mahus chay. It's etzem chiyuni. Mashegin the guf is mitzad atzmi, it's a davar meis. So in order for the chayis, the guf, it has to, in order for the svara to be understood by the Talmud, it has to go through a tzimtzum and relate to the me'ach Talmud. So in order for the chayis, the guf, chayis has to be misamtzim and to relate to the guf. So he says, etzem nefesh ini begeder chayis lachis. There's no such a thing, a chayis, which in Yoni is lahachis davar achar. You can't be mitzamtzim the chayis hanefesh that it should be in a tziyur. In Vazabash, it's a chayis lahachis. Chayis is almost. Chayis is only chay be'etzem. There's no two chayis. There's no chayis which is a chayis to give life to something else. There's a mahus chay is a mahus chay. So it's chayis also, it's a mahus of pshitis. Kind of a little bit of chayis. There's no take chayis in a different mode. Chayis is a mahus of it's not a tzir, which you could have more or less of. Like seichel, it's a certain mitzias. You could have more seichel or less seichel. Chayis is a certain mahus. It's a mahus of pshitis. I mean, that was verstehen, but I'm saying chayis is not a certain mitzias that you could have less or more. So the nefesh has it in a great degree, and the guf has it in a smaller degree. Chayis is a mahus, or you're alive or not. There's no middle. There's no. I'm alive. I have only say I got a certain degree of life. Life is a mahus of chayis. It's a davar which doesn't have a medida. It's a mahus. It's not a davar shamitzias. It's a certain mahus. There's never saying a davar chay. Say the nefesh is chay be'etzem. You can't really define what life is because it's not a mitzias really. Life is not a defined idea. Say what does life mean? That you can walk around, you can smell, you could. That's all. See the fact that there is a somebody, there's a mahus, there's a identity, there's a someone here. That's not a mitziastic thing that you could measure how much, what it is, and how much energy you have here. It's the mahus which contains the energy. The eye which is alive, the mahus chiyunis, the nefesh, is the eye which contains things. It itself is not a certain. It's not a certain mitzias. It's a mahus of pshitas. There's a me. That's a davar chay. A someone. It's not a certain mitzias. It's in a pshitas. Chayis. Pshitas means it's not a. There's the mitzias of tzir means that its being is a certain form, a certain function, a certain seichel is a kayach to understand, a kayach to do this, a kayach to do that. Then there's the someone, which is the mohus which contains this kayach. There's the nefesh. There's the mohus chaya. Someone that he's the somebody that contains everything. It's not a certain energy. Energy is something which is belonged to a someone. The etzem achai is the someone which is behind, which is the carrier of all these things. So you kind of have a little bit of that someone. Or is that mohos or not? There's no little bit of it. Chayes is a nekuda of pshitas. Wie soll nur sein der Bier? Chayes is a nekuda of pshitas. He says, etzem anesh ene begeder chayes lachis. He says, ene chayes lachis, hu b'chinas espashtus. Choletzim botim espashtus. Means espashtus means that your mitzias. What does it mean that something is in Yoni is? You say. In Yoni is to affect somewhere. You say something is. You say a table. A table is nimtza in a certain place. In Yoni is to affect somewhere. It's or something which is a certain thing is that the more they're mispashit, the more it brings out. They say something. If it lasts for a day, it's weak. If it lasts for 20 days, it shows on its kayach. Lasts for more than 20 days, it shows more on its kayach. You have something. If it's only here. So it's a limited thing. The more it extends itself, the more it brings out its takeif. That's a davar shel tziyur, a davar shel mitzias. The bigger it is, and the more it's mispashit, brings out the takeif hadavar. I'm shaking a mohos, a davar shel pshitis, which is higher, which is not. It's a mohos for itself. It's a mohos for itself. So his pashtus doesn't. The fact that it's nirgash in more and more madregas, and its inyan is mispashit more, doesn't add in the takeif inyan. It's an independent mahos for itself. It never relates to the inyan of ashpa on a makabel. Its mile is not. It doesn't. He doesn't grow from the fact that another makabel is margishim. See, a svara is if more people understand it, let's say, it brings out more of the takeoff for the svara. That you go according to Dasarev. So the fact that this svara is understood by more and more bali seichel brings out the takeoff advar. So the rechtigkeit of a svara, the truth of it, is expressed in how much it's mispashit, how much makabelim agree with it, how much makabelim are matzdik this idea. We have certain things that they're entity for themselves, they're mahus for themselves. So whether the makabel, whether a keli agrees with it or not, doesn't add anything in the take of union. It's an independent mahus. It stands for itself. So etzem bilti mispashit. Etzem is that it's not. It doesn't get its power. It doesn't get its mile from the fact that it's niskabel by another makabel. It's a mohus for itself. Yeah, I mean there's pratim, but the nekuda is that it's not shaykh to say that the etzem nefesh should be able to relate to the tzir of being machayel guf. If it relates to a makim, if it needs a makabel and it's relating to a makabel, it's not a mahus already. It's already a mitzias. It's not nefesh. It's not chayis. Chayis is that it's that there's a life here. There's a someone here. If this whole someone is, he relates to a makabel, that someone agrees to accept him, that's not a someone, that's not the mahus of a chay. It's not the mahus of a nefesh. It's nish the minyan. You say you have someone that is home mahus is that other people accept him, or he looks for haskama that others should justify. So you're not your own person. You're not your own person. What's the cheshire if you're not your own person? What's the a person means that you are an entity. You're the identity. You're davar chai. Not that if you're getting your life from somewhere else, so you're not a davar chai. There's no mahus there. It can be a very good way of life, but there's no mahus behind this way of life. So a way of life is not a davar chai. Davar chai is that there's a mahus, which is the carrier of this life. A mahus, if he's relating to a makabel, it's not the etzem kameshu. It's the way he relates to the gdarim of this and this makabel. It's a snishke nefesh. That's not a chai. What Akavani Wasbular is bringing that the etzem is never misamtzim in the tzir of his pashtus. So, mash nimshach lahachis so are levat. So on one hand, if we see the payla guf alive. So what's the life that we see in the guf? It's walking. It's talking. It means lechatchila. It's a life which is something you could measure. The guf's life, you could measure the guf's life. Till now, the bus of Adam was laying dirt in a goylem, a piece of matter. Now it's a levity gazach. It's moving. It's breathing. The nefesh is chayis is higher than these type of expressions. It's a chai be'etzem. Its life is not say expressed in the fact that it could move and it could talk and it could walk. It's b'mhus a davar chai. So he says here, so if you see the chayis, the way the goof experiences are about that. Same thing it says when you get there Hashemesh. Sha'etzem uchay. Memela ari b'chinas chayis lachis. K'mervez v'Hashemesh. Etzem Hashemesh should be here. Memela gilu er lahir. K'meik menefesh liyesei chay hagile v'ari mimenu lahachis. Since that's you're saying the mile of er, that it's er mein amar, it always brings out the chisaron of er is that it's not the etzem, it's a arda bavad. Leidach, since it's the arda bavad, it's the er mein amar. What's begila? It's the mucker's begila. From the arda can be wissen as the etzem. From the seichel Talmud, if you have the Talmud saying the svara that he understood it, anybody's going to know that there's a rav lav dafke, because it's an entity for itself. He has the svara of the eretz verstanden. When the Talmud's going to say over what he understood, people could think that that's the svara that he himself was mechadesh. They'll not b'chal know there's a rav. Mashikin by since the is the gilei amar, he's going to touch up over here. So if you see the itself tells you that there's an etzem. It says like this. From the ha'ara, from the gilei, we can see that there's an etzem. How? כמי גוף שהוא גם כן חי. שהרי גוף אין כמו לבוש שבי רק מלובש דבר החי, כמי גוף עצמי הוא חי. אבל מקום כמו החי שלו רק מצד הנשמה, אולי שהוא חי בעצם, ולזס אם יחילס לגוף להכיס דבר. והנפש העולם הידו חייס להכיס, זה שנפש הוא חי בעצם. It says, anything which is מצד מהוס אינה דבר חי. If the guf which is mekabel chayis, you can't be mechayis something else. Because the guf is the mekabel of chayis. The mekabel, so he's mekabel chayis. He doesn't have the etzem of chayis. But maybe he can't be mechayis something else. To be mechayis something else, only something which is the etzem achay. So whatever it touches, something which is etzem chay, becomes a davar chay. But something which it itself is not a mohus of chayis, can't affect something else as a verna lebedikazach. So he says here, from the fact that the nefesh is meir beguf, the etzem is higher than the way the guf experiences life doesn't express the chayis the way the nefesh experiences life. Leidach, from the fact that from the chayis that you see, the guf is alive. So you, from seeing the guf without seeing the etzem, when you see a guf which is alive, you see from there that there's an etzem which is chay. From the you see the metzias etzem. Because it's not shaykh for there to be a chayis lahachiyas unless the chay be'etzem being mechayis. Okay, maybe we'll have to chazer over this prat, just to clarify some prat. Let's just go through some isis here. Was beginning is verstehen the Hemshech advar. It says like this: let's skip these brackets. He's bringing out the part of Mein Amar, that since the is the Gilei Amar, so from the you could know the Metzias says. It's K'meken on the Yedim Me'aris and Nefesh, Be'ezim Adregu on Nefesh. K'mayim Sharshim M'chinas Achsadim M'chinas Agvuris, K'mivisham B'Silo. K'meken M'chinas Meichin Amidus. The Chozev Shalei Me'ara. Finally, V'shei Gilei Etzim Shemein Etzim. Yeah, it's interesting what he says here. It says Chassidus that the Nefesh, even though we're not dealing with the Nukud of Chayis L'chore, but you see, Bishami was M'chinas Chsadim, and B'Silo was M'chinas Gvuris. Bishami was Gvuris, and Hil was Chsadim. And from the Gilei Achayis, from the Nefesh ways Mizgali in the Guf, we're able to tell what from which madrega is the Sheirish HaNefesh. The Shamai's Sheirish was from M'chinas Gvuris. B'Silo Sheirish is M'chinas Chsadim. And from the Gilei of the Nefesh Beguf, which is only Arab Bavad, it's not that the Nefesh is misamtzin to be masim to the Guf. Is the Nefesh stays in its mohos, and b'meil it's meir. The Nefesh is meir in the Guf. But since it's Kameshu Mein Amar, so the Metzias Ha'etzem is reflected in the They're able to tell from the from which madrega is the Sheirish and Sham. That's because Mein Amar. If it wouldn't have been Mein Amar, so the Guf would only contain the element of Chayis which relates to the Guf, not the Sheirish of the Neshama, the Sheirish of the Nefesh. The fact that in the chayis aguf you could tell the shirish haneshama, that's because the eir is me'in amar. The nefesh never mitzamtzim itself to mechayah the guf. The nefesh kameshu stays in its atzmius, and that inin kameshu is nirgash. That etzim is meir. The same we say when you get to the shemesh. Since the nefesh has chayis, not in a limited way, it has the mahuz of chayis, not an agbal de kaifin. So when the chayis is meir, it's nirgash in the guf. But so what's meir? The nefesh itself is meir. So therefore, you could tell from the gilui the sheirish nefesh, whether it's from chesed or gvura. Am kon gezel or levatch im ben etzem klau. Ul zeis ma shnedem or rak mit tsies etz. Am mahus etzem an sham in redem klau me or. Zal fi shor levat im ben etzem klau. Said before. Yeah, the same nekuda. Means the reason why the nefesh is mechayah the guf is not because the nefesh has chayis that relates to the guf. It's because the nefesh is the mahus of chayis without a specific tzir. Since the nefesh has the mahus of chayis without a specific tzir, but mele is also nirgash in the guf. Not because it relates also to a guf form. Because the nefesh has the nekuda of chayis without a agbala. So therefore, if you're looking from this point of view of the mekabel, so you're only seeing chayis the way it's expressed in guf, not the mahus. So that's a arab vat. It's not even a percentage of what the nefesh is. Okay, this pratim are the same as before. Just maybe with some pratim to get the chay betzach chay belachis. Maybe it's good to go over again. We'll go, but just these pratim are the same as before. So the l'chein erpel shem shini kal be'ez, shnei kal masher nuchsar emiru lachis im lav. Ein zenegesh gam shleim shechas aras nefesh. Ein shem gerem benefesh. Music kumei kol chay misnaneh. So a live being, one of the expressions of life is that there's movement, there's tnuah. So it's not that the chayis is totally in the tnuah. Hadei gam bilti at tnuah chay. Inish misnaneh b'chinas tnuah sechayis. Hainu espashas sechayis lachis. Hadei gam im enim menaneh espashas mikom kum chay be'etzem. Kumekin shim shechayis enim mites was there's a davar be'etzem anefesh. Shkos of dochen keva bar eisam be'yivarech eisam bar marsh zel shal tzerech hashpon tesu irba mashpia. Says why the Eibusher give a special bracha to Adam Rishon, because in order for it to be mashpia, there had to be more air in the for the hashpah need more air in the mashpia. K'mei b'atar shis le'imei. Zeh b'chinas hashpah atzmi. It has to negate hashpah lahaylut. Aval b'shachas ha'or lahachis v'negate nefesh v'im mechayah the guf. Eini mitez v'al deizeh mu'umah be'etzem ha'nefesh. Yeah, same thing he said negate Hashem. Shchein ein etzem nitzes v'slavish b'ashpashas v'ora shergidei ora b'derech ha'melech. Kumei kol chayim misnaner zeh derech ha'melech. Shachayim ha'melech misnaner. He says mashal kol chayim misnaner. The pshat is that the chay has to. Is there a specialist askus to move? So if someone's alive, the fact that there's tnuah, it's a specialist askus to move, or that's with derech hamela. If you have such a davar chazak, the mele there's tnuah. It's not a special yachas to create the tnuah. Can make a masha machayis a guf reiz shlei adis askus. Can shemer beguf mele guf chayamen. Now he goes into some pratim, which in chayis nevesh is different than. Yisai mentions here. He also mentioned it earlier. When they get guf atzmen asachai, saying one of this is it's not married so much in this mimer, but it's when they get to know the sin a little bit. He brings it later again. That saying usually one of the kolam ba'er is since the shemesh, the mocker, is not mitzamtzim to relate to the mocker ma'makabel. So in mele b'shas the shemesh l'mashal is after zrichas hashemesh there's light in the world. But since the ashpa never related to the world, it's the shemesh's reflection. The same mohus, the mohus of the shemesh is never misamsim to relate to the makam ha'elam. But this mohus kameshu is mispashit, emanates. The mele, the world itself doesn't become, I say, by night the world is a dark world, and by day the world is a world that contains light. The world doesn't contain any light. The world is the same world by day and by night. By day the sun is here. It's not that when the sun is here, so there's light in the world, therefore you can see. Not that the world becomes a place that contains within it light. The world is not affected by the light that exists. You turn on light in a room, so the room becomes a shining room. The room stays the same room as before. There's light in this room. If it would be in a way of shefa that the Elyon was misamtzim and invested his energy in a makabel, so now the makabel contains his energy. But it is that Shemesh never was misamtzim to relate the Indian behesim to the makabel. The Shemesh says kameshu, and it's nirgash. The melis never relates to the makabel. By the nefesh and guf is different. When the person is alive, it's not the pshat that the nefesh is chayis, and the guf has within it a davar chay. The guf itself becomes a davar chay. It's not only that the guf is a levush, that in the guf there's a lebedik nefesh. B'shas the nefesh is nirgash in the guf becomes a part of the nefesh. The guf becomes a davar chai. So the ashpa is called in Chassidus the lashon that by shemesh usually ashpa b'derech is ashpa makif. Makif means that the mekabel doesn't absorb the ashpa. Why doesn't he absorb it? Because the makir was never misamson to relate himself to the mekabel. So the Indian stays always mufshit from the mekabel. But you see, the way it is in the makir is b'meila also mispashet. But the mekabel doesn't possess the Indian. Mashek when you get the chayis, we see that when the guf is alive, the guf is transformed. It becomes an entity of life, a live entity. It's not that there's a mahus chayis and the guf is carrying a nefesh. The guf becomes a lebed gazach. Who atzmin asachay? It's ashpa pnimis, but it's not ashpa pnimis al derech like shefa where the mekabel is misamsun fi erech the mashpia is misamsun erech. It's a different word. The chayis is something that where it's nirgash. The mekabel becomes like the elyon. It's a different word. The shemesh is never misamson. But the tchun of chayis is that wherever chayis is nirgash, wherever chayis is meir, the thing which is affected by chayis becomes fully. That becomes its mitzias. That becomes its mohos. The tachten becomes eis mekabel. He becomes a part of the mashpia. It's a different word. It's not that there's a mekabel and the elyon relates to the mekabel. The elyon is kamei but he's meir. He's not contained within itself. He's mispashit. But by chayis, the tchun of chayis is that whatever is affected by chayis becomes a part of the chayis, becomes a part of the nefesh. The guf becomes misached with the nefesh. It's mizbatel legamri. It becomes a part of the nefesh. It gives itself fully over to the nefesh. So it's not that the guf like the guf and the nefesh relates to the guf. The guf, the way the nefesh is mechay the guf is that the guf becomes a part of the mitzias nefesh. He's mevatel himself legamri for the nefesh, and he's misached with it. Yeah, that's nashrin tovshin. We'll try to go over a little bit when we get the chayes, just a bissel klar machen some pratim, and then we'll